I've been around UMass Dartmouth for quite a while now. I was a student. I've been on the faculty for a long time. I'm an economist, so I'm in the economics department. And it's very exciting. One of the great things about that all of us get to experience at work at UMass Dartmouth is the excitement of bringing new students and new families into our family. And so as everyone has said to you, we're here about student success. And we have to be proactive about student success. So there's a part for us as a university to play, there's a part for families and parents to play, but mainly it's up to the students. And that's what I kind of wanted to talk to you about today. So as you've heard, some of this is repetitive, but repetition is good, right? So as you've heard, there are some challenges, some adjustments students have to make when they come to college. And we can kind of lump them into broad categories. And I was thinking about this. We have to put the adjustments that they make academically into context with all the adjustments that they have to make as a person coming into the university, right? So the broad categories are, I think, so students have to make cultural adjustments, right? You're coming into new cultures and you're experiencing different cultures and different ways of thinking, and people with different religious beliefs or different genders or sexuality or identities. And so you have to find your way there. Well, how does that relate to your academic performance? Well, it relates because part of your academics will be determined by the people around you, by your peer groups. And if you're not comfortable in that group, then your academics will suffer. Further, there's much to learn from people who are unlike you. And so becoming part of that new culture is important to your academic experience. There are emotional adjustments to make, right? So first year of college can be very stressful. But we shouldn't look at stress as a bad thing necessarily. It's another way to learn. It's learning how to cope with stress. It's learning how to find solutions. As they say, it takes a lot of pressure to make a diamond, right? So we're making diamonds as we're learning to cope with those emotional pressures. There are financial adjustments to make, right? For a student, you didn't have to consider how you were paying for school in elementary school and high school. Now you do. Do I go out and get a job? Should I talk to financial aid? Are there scholarships I can apply for? This kind of financial literacy, personal and academic financial literacy, become important to students. And their ability to cope with that affects their academic performance. There are intellectual adjustments students have to make. So let's segue into the pure academic stuff. So what are the intellectual adjustments that students have to make? So in elementary school and high school, you learn a lot of facts and you learn how to do some problem solving. And you tell the teacher what you learned, and we hope some of it sticks with you. The process of learning in a university or college is a little different. So now we can't just learn facts. We can't just learn skills of problem solving. Now we have to build a context. Now, if you're in a major in an academic program, by the time you finish that, you should be able to put that academic program, what you've learned, into context with your life and into context with the rest of the world. Now you have to understand the underlying fundamentals, right? Higher level thought. So when you join a university, you're joining a community of learners, a community of scholars who think about things at a little deeper level. One thing to consider strongly, Your first year of college is not the 13th grade. There's a jump from your senior year of high school to your first year of college, a significant one. And it requires an adjustment in the way that you think about the material that you're learning. So what are the academic adjustments? Now we know we had to make a 30,000 foot intellectual adjustment. What are the academic adjustments that we have to make? The main thing for students to consider is, for them, it's their education, and they have to take ownership of it. Much of the learning that happens, they have to make it happen. So what does that look like broadly? For students, it looks like them taking an active role in their learning. And we'll talk about what that looks like. It looks like them attaining college level learning strategies, right? So not only do they have to learn, they may have to learn new ways to learn, right? Are they open to feedback? Which is to say, have they developed a relationship with their professors, with their advisors, with advisors in their college, with other support services that allow them to listen to feedback about their performance and accept that and use it as a tool to improve? And finally, do they make adjustments? A lot of becoming successful academically at the university level is about something we could think of as self-regulation, right? Ron was talking about choices at the end of his presentation. There are choices to be made, right? And that's what the self-regulation part is. Students have to learn about themselves, and they have to learn about their strengths and their weaknesses, and they have to make adjustments that are necessary to be successful, okay? So, nuts and bolts. You're a student in a university and you're taking some courses. How does that differ from high school? Well, it differs in a lot of ways, in some very significant ways. So let's start with the fundamental way. High school, you have a teacher, right? High school faculty, we call teachers. University faculty, we call professors. So there's step one. Generally, we refer to faculty in university as professor. So start right there for students, start calling them professor, and then they might make some adjustments to that. They might ask you to call them something different, but professor is usually pretty safe. So how does a college professor differ from a high school teacher? Well, they differ in that they have different responsibilities. So the high school teacher's main responsibility is teaching, right? And they provide other service to the school and the school district sometimes too, because teachers' work is never done. My mother, by the way, was a teacher for 50 years. Faculty at a university, they teach, they do scholarship, their own research, they provide service to the university in that they're on committees, they're helping shape university policy, they are involved in the operations in the university, and they use their expertise because they're subject experts. They use their expertise to serve the community. So they may be involved in community service projects. This is all part of their job. And so that's a little different. That's a little different. Availability to your professor in the university. Because they're doing all those things, they may not be around in an office all the time when they're not teaching. So they have office hours, and your professor will have designated office hours as a student. And so you'll have to see them at that time or make an appointment with them. So if you have a conflict with their office hours, say you have a class during their office hours, they'll be happy to meet you at some other point. For families or parents of students, the relationship with faculty are a little different. So up until you're in high school, we encourage you as parents to interact with the teachers and to be as informed as you can about the academic progress of your students. Once they go to college, that's not true anymore. So we consider them independent adults in that respect. And federal law, the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, we call it. We know well, we understand FERPA very well here. It's a friend of ours. So student information about their academic progress, their time at the university, that's private. It belongs to them. And it can only be shared with a parent if they give permission. And so that's a different part of the relationship with faculty. So that's step one. I must also say, to encourage students to meet the faculty, speak with them, interact with them, go to office hours, in particular faculty in your major, because one of the things that we know is one of the keys to success academically at a university is to build relationships with a faculty member. So what else is different about the university academically than high school? Grading is different, right? So in elementary school and high school, we tend to have a lot of little assignments and we have the ability to make things up and improve grades. At the university level, we're a little stiffer than that. So typically you'll have a smaller number of assignments, smaller number of papers, smaller number of exams and quizzes, and therefore they're all more important, right? And there's typically not a whole lot of opportunity to make things up. So you can't come in at the end and snatch a really good grade in a course. You have to keep up with work from the beginning. Back to this idea, the education belongs to the students and they have to be proactive and they have to be working all the time. So that's a little different. The learning process itself is different. So in elementary school, high school, much of the learning takes place in the classroom. Students and teacher imparting a lot of information to students. A little different in college, a little different. So a lot of, probably most of, the learning happens outside of class, right? So what the faculty member will do during a lecture is provide some information, some background, some context. They'll build a framework around a particular topic. All the reading, the working, the solving, students need to do that outside of class. So it's been suggested that the most successful students spend 3 hours outside of class for every hour they spend in class. Seems like a lot, but it's doable and it works, right? So the learning is different. So for a student, that learning happens outside of class, but it doesn't have to happen alone. So you have peers taking that same course. I encourage study groups. If you're having difficulty grasping material, there are supports on campus. If you're having difficulty with math, there's a support center to deal with that, right? The Academic Resource Center can send you to the STEM Learning Lab to help you with your math. If you're taking business courses and you're struggling with business courses, there's a support center for that. Writing, we have a center that supports students in their writing. So yes, a lot of this learning happens outside of the classroom, but it doesn't have to happen alone. And that's an important point that I'd also like to make. Sometimes there's a stigma against asking for help, right? We don't want to ask for help. We don't want to appear weak. We want to look like we can do it on our own. Newsflash, you can't. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of adjustments to make, a lot to be done. And there is no shame in asking for help. I assure you, if your students were going to Harvard or Yale or Princeton, the first thing they tell them when they get to campus is go to the tutoring center and get help, right? There is no stigma against asking for help. I can also assure you that the greatest research faculty we have at UMass Dartmouth, when they're working in their discipline, they run up against problems and they run it by their colleagues. They run it by colleagues on another campus at a research institute. We all reach out for help, all of us. And I encourage students to do that. No shame in asking for help. Please reach out for help. And so like homework, right? Tests and exams, those don't come as often either. It's a little different than it was when I first went to college. So I went to college the first time, almost 40 years ago. So all the courses I had, I remember my first semester, all the courses I had, there was no homework, there were 3 exams, right? There were midterms and finals, and that was it. And we've discovered that that's not a good way for people to learn. And so there's more work during the semester, and there are more quizzes and other kinds of assessments, but not as much as you would get in elementary school or high school. So each one has more weight. So again, integrating this whole thing. Students, proactive, keep up with the work. In order not to fall behind, if you're struggling, go get help, because every assignment, every test has such weight that you can't let yourself slip. So proactivity, new learning strategies, get help, keep up, right? So what are some other things to consider? So we have the professor now in this class. We know how this process is going to differ a little bit from what we would have done in high school. What else would that course look like for us? So when you get to the course, students get there, they're going to get a syllabus, right? And a syllabus is kind of like a contract. It's like, here's how the course is going to go, and here are the policies that we have, and here's the information about maybe the textbook or reading materials, how it's going to be graded. Here's something that's really important, and please encourage students listening, read the syllabus, because a lot of the information that you may need, you may want to ask someone at some point, it's probably there. Here's something that's there that's really important beyond other kinds of policies, one of which I'm going to talk about in a second. Typically, a syllabus will have a description of the course, right? And something we call learning objectives. And learning objectives can be really helpful to students if you read them and you understand them. So here's what a learning objective is, very simple. You ask this question: at the end of the course, what will the student know and what will they be able to do? And that's how you form learning objectives for a course. And your syllabus will have those. So as you're reading, as you're studying, as you're discussing this material with your peers and your professors, those learning objectives should be in your mind all the time. So why am I here? What am I doing? What am I supposed to learn? Well, those learning objectives will tell you at the end of this course, you should know this and you should be able to do this, right? So that can help you when you're looking at a set of disparate facts that don't seem to go together. That can help you create that framework around that course. Well, what am I supposed to be learning? And then when you see it, you recognize it. Oh yeah, so I was supposed to learn this, but I needed to know this and this and this before my professor could talk about the thing I was supposed to learn, right? So I encourage you, read the syllabus. So in the syllabus, you find policies about how the course is going to run. Key policy to look at is the attendance policy. Now, some professors may not require students to be in class every day when it meets. Typically classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, the odd Monday, Wednesday class. Some professors don't require students to be there every day. My advice to students, be there every day. Be there every day for lots of reasons. So certainly your first semester, you're still onboarding to the university. You're trying to get used to that environment. So just being there, you form friendships or relationships with peers. See, in elementary school and high school, the key relationships tend to be, right, our family, friends, authority figures, meaning schools, principals, teachers, those kinds of things. For a very young person, those are key relationships: family, friends, authority. Key relationships increase in college, and where they increase to are relationships with peers, right? Classmates, other people in that community of learners and scholars that are interested in the same thing I'm interested in, and mentors. So not people that have authority over you, but people that work with you and try to facilitate a good experience for you. Faculty, staff, advisors, right? So those two new groups, interacting with all of them as much as possible, creates success. So students should go to class, whether they're required to or not. And you just learn by accident. I mean, you could be sitting there reading a magazine and just hear something and it sticks to go to class. But that policy will be different for different professors in the syllabus. In the syllabus. I referred to office hours before. Office hours will be in the syllabus. So if you need to know when the professor is going to be in their office, that'll be there. How do you contact the professor? Another thing I would say, and these are nuts and bolts things, but they turn out to be important because oftentimes we find at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, halfway through someone's college career, they're still asking these same questions. And the answers are there. I encourage students, whether they're struggling or not, to go to office hours just to try to build a relationship. Remember that relationship with a faculty member is an important indicator of success. I encourage students, just go to office hours. Also, if you are struggling, if you need help, I think of learning any discipline as like learning a language, right? You come in to learn a language you don't know. First, they teach you words. Here's this word, here's what it means, right? And then you learn how to make a simple sentence. How do we hang these words together? And then we hang a few of those sentences together and it becomes a conversation, right? Learning anything is like that. So I used to tell economics majors, by the end of your college career, you will fluently speak economics, right? So I, as someone with a doctorate in economics, and you can sit down and have a conversation. Well, literally, all the note taking, all the reading, all of that. Sometimes a 5-minute conversation speaking this language with your professor can change everything. So I encourage you to go to office hours. So we know the process is different than high school. We know the classroom is centered around this professor who is different from a high school teacher. We know there's information available that students have at their disposal and they need to read and they need to learn. We know that students need to interact with their peers and they need to interact with their professor, and they need to build their own study strategies, and they need to be able to self-regulate, which they need to be able to understand themselves and how they learn, and be able to make changes to how they learn over time. If we can get to that place with a student, they could be very successful. But the key is it's the student's education, and they need to own it. And while it is theirs and they own it, there is also a lot of support here. So they own it, but they don't have to do it alone.